but it's probably took me another sort of 5 to 10 years to actually really like the song.
Oh, well,
So there you go.
yeah. Well, then now I
Um,
don't feel so bad about
I
my.
know.
I don't know. I don't want to say it's lukewarm. There,
Yeah,
I'm like, what do I say, like
yeah, yeah.
70% on board with this song. I'm just not
Don't,
100% in there yet.
don't get me wrong. I fucking love this song now, and I hate any person who doesn't worship it immediately. But
We've got a bright future
and
then.
I shall drop some comments in this episode to let you know that. But no,
So it's you with those burner accounts on all those other
yes,
episodes we've
of
done.
course it is.
Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. It's Andy, it's John, and it is time, as always, to honk a horn. No, to listen to some more music. And today is going to be one that John has on offer for me to go off and check out. So, John, what'll it be?
So we've got a band called Killing Joke.
I am familiar with the name. I would not be surprised in the least if I've heard some of their stuff in the past. In fact, I'm almost sure that I have, but I don't know what. I don't have a strong familiarity with their oeuvre, so I've just heard this name bandied about so much, and I'm quite certain that people have perhaps shown me some of their stuff in the past, but again, I can't put my finger on it. So, what is the track that you have today?
I can guarantee you 1000% you've heard one of their songs, but we'll get to that another episode. So this song today is Love Like Blood.
Love Like Blood. Okay. Well, then that's interesting as hell. Let me,
Sticky.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Let me go off and give this thing a spin, and I'll come back and let you know my thoughts. Came in smelling like Teen Spirit there for a second. It's this industrial kind of nature to that drum beat. Also, the chugging, which John usually isn't a big fan of, but I can understand in the right context it works, and I think this is probably it for him. Um, yeah, that chugging comes in, and it's also leans into that industrial sound a little bit, but it also has a little bit of like funk swing to it, uh, and that arpeggio dun, 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 sounds very much like The Cure to me. Now I know that it's probably less it's sounding like The Cure, even though it does, and more sounding like this era and genre of music. My point of reference is always The Cure because from this genre of music and this time, they are the ones who stand out most to me and the ones I am the biggest fan of out of all of these bands. But through John and some of you lovely listeners out there, I'm beginning to open my eyes to some of their contemporaries a bit wider. Um, and now it's probably more of just this understanding that this was a sign of the genre and the 80s and what people were doing and the sound that they were going for, but there's this chorus laden sound to that arpeggio that to me just screams Robert Smith. But yeah, it all sounds really good nonetheless. heard him sing about like this soldiers in the field and that life is short and like beauty is destined to decay. All of this sounds like it's about the brevity of life, and not to let it escape you and perhaps live it to the fullest. I don't know. I'm just throwing shit at the wall here based on a few bits that I'm trying to jot down and catch either way. But it's subject matter that we've heard in other songs, and I think it's really relatable. So why not, stick with that motif? Is that like a really low piano note? It almost sounds like a very low bell tolling, which is really interesting sound. And the first time I think I've heard it in this track. What he's saying there, is it enough like birds or enough like bloods? I don't know, but it's an interesting line. I wish I could nail it down to help better illustrate maybe what he's kind of singing about here, what he's talking about, however you want to put it. But it's interesting. I'm just trying to nail down what exactly he's saying. this was an interesting listen in that there are comps to I think that could be made to the Cure in this, and I do love the Cure. So there were aspects of this that I really enjoyed, like a lot. Musically, for instance, the instrumentation, music, really good, and that's despite it having some synthiness to it, which is kind of can be polarizing for me because sometimes I really like that sound, sometimes I don't. I will say that, and I don't know if part of this is kind of his covering his face during this or what, but there is this melodrama to his delivery, which I know you could easily argue that that exists in the Cure's oeuvre as well. But I think Robert Smith has a more unique or original voice that, for me, is really captivating. So I enjoy listening to that, despite the fact that there is some of this like sad boy hurt in his voice, which in the right setting, in the right voice, is like really speaks to me. In this case, it's not like it's bad. It's just it doesn't like really resonate the way Robert Smith's voice does. Um, but the music is terrific. I mean, there are shades of like this cold industrial movement, um, and I really like the dynamics at play here. But there's also this bright kind of sharp nature to that arpeggioed guitar piece. Um, there's just enough swing in that chugging bass to give it an extra shot of rhythmic movement that I really appreciate as well. So yeah, this was. I mean, I'd like to give this another couple listens, learn more about it from John before I really just go throwing a like codified opinion about it. But this tested pretty well with me. I really did like the music a lot in this, and that again, that arpeggio guitar really spoke to me and had shades of the Cure, so I'm gonna instantly latch on to that. So yeah, a lot to enjoy here. Maybe if not everything, that I will probably need to listen to it more to get a firmer opinion on where I stand on his voice exactly. And to be fair, the narrative I only caught bits and pieces of, so I wasn't really able to form a strong opinion or even synopsis of what he was offering up there from a lyrical standpoint. So again, that's something that John can help me out with when I get back to him and discuss it. So without further ado, let's get back and chop it up with the man himself.
Kalamazoo, he's back. So you've had to listen to Love Like Blood. Presumably should be inside rather than out. By Killing Joke. What do you make of it all?
I make a few things actually from giving this thing a go, so I will get into my notes to canvas them. The song opens with what appears to be this stretched out resonant synth note or notes and this affected guitar. And at the 15-second mark, these powerful drum strikes herald in the song proper. And on their coattails comes this chugging guitar bass motif. Our singer then begins to deliver the first verse, and he has this very quintessential 80s sound to his voice, which matches the sound of the music they've constructed as well. And he sings of, and I'm paraphrasing here, having to play our lives like soldiers in the field because life is short, and that he's running fast all the time as strength and beauty are destined to decay. So he's really underscoring the brevity of our time here on Earth and the fleeting nature of youth and life in general, it sounds like. So he sings of cutting the rose in full bloom, another metaphor for life being brief or even cut short. And after this line, the drums fire off a fill, and the song shifts from here. And without forfeiting its rhythmic pace, the song opens up a bit and sounds slightly fuller. And he repeats this line in which he sings, "A love like," and I know what the title is, but it sounded so much more like he was saying "a love like birds" than he was saying "a love like blood." my Yankee ears, I'm sure, are the reason for blame there. But I couldn't quite make it out. But if I'm being honest, I'm sure it's like blood, given the title of the track. And this gives way to more of that chugging on the guitar and bass that is accented by this seemingly chorus affected four note arpeggio motif. Uh, and for me, and I know that this is coming right off the heels of yesterday's episode where you couldn't help but point out similarities between what was happening there and a one Robert Smith of The Cure. But my God, this has more than just a dash of The Cure-esque sound to it, which again, I think is probably more emblematic of the time that this was written and released. For me, as someone who is very familiar with The Cure and not as much their counterparts of the same genre and time period, is probably just from my skewed vantage point that I always want to compare to The Cure, when this is probably something that is more universal among all artists that were coming out around the same time and doing similar kind of music. But I couldn't help but go instantly to the Cure and Robert Smith when I heard that, particularly that arpeggiated chorus laden guitar bit. And he sings of love and hate fighting with burning hearts. And then something about legends living and man being something again. Um, Not quite catching every word here, likely to no one's surprise out there. There is this, you talk about quintessential 80s and this genre of music. There is this melodrama to his delivery that makes it hard for me to latch on to each word he's singing. I catch bits about self-preservation, ruling the day no more, and dreams of promised lands and fields as well. Something about not never fading in season. And then he sings, "We learn to die, red tears on gray." Red tears, blood. I'm making the connection there, but outside of that, I really have no idea what we're working with. And this is all before we get another one of those powerful drum fills that suggest a shift in the song. And it's confirmed as we head into another chorus. Those drums have that. You talked around this comparison in a recent episode, but that "Smells Like Teen Spirit" beginning of the track, that drum hit. There's a bit. What was the word that you had recently discovered for that mechanism on the drums? It was such an odd word. It was almost onomatopoeic, that you had alluded to. I'm sorry. Say it again because you got cut off.
Um,
Yes, yes, yeah. There's
so apparently you start rather than raising the sticks. I mean, I'm being very technical here, so tell me if I lose you. Um, you raise the sticks, and then one is full up and one is only half up, and you bring them both down at the same time. So you got to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's a bit of that going on in the beginning, and then from time to time as well.
Me,
throughout
me
it.
and Stuart Copeland were like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He learned everything he knows from you, from what I gathered there. uh, so he repeats that line where he sings of some act being done, and again, I'm far from certain on what the overall picture he's painting here. But there are enough allusions to tropes that are often associated with a cycle or end of life, so I assume that's we're in this wheelhouse, right? You can fill in the gaps for me when I get to the end of my notes here and you school me on everything. But after the chorus, our chugging guitar motif leads us into John's favorite part of any song, the bridge. And this part has a slightly darker tinge to it, as what sounds like a piano mocking an incredibly low bell toll is deployed at the end of each repetition, or just every few beats that they drop that in there. Um, this gives way to another chorus, after which the chugging guitar bass cuts out, leaving the drums and some keys to shine for a moment as the that more shimmering but sharp Cure-like guitar accents the repetitions. But the chugging guitar's absence is short-lived, as it, along with the bass, returns to the fray, injecting more rhythmic movement to the mix. And this carries on for a bit until the 6:14 mark, where everything but the drums and some resonant synth keys cut out for about 15 seconds, only for the bass to come back in with that. It is chugging, but this chug has a little bit of a swing to it at times, which is an interesting, um, almost flirt with funk to the way that this bass is played. And it sees us to the proper fade out of the track. So this was a pretty good listen, even if at moments the lyrical content and delivery felt just a tad melodramatic for my liking. And I know that that's silly saying how much I loved The Cure, and Robert Smith surely is at least co-king of the melodrama, along with my one of my other favorites, and I say that very much tongue in cheek, in Morrissey. But that is the another, like, it's emblematic of this era of music and the genre of music. For me though, I guess it's less about the melodrama that's involved and more what, like, for me, Robert Smith has a more unique voice than this voice. This voice is and because it's less unique, it just doesn't hit with me. It doesn't resonate with me as much as hearing Robert Smith, perhaps if he were to sing the very same thing. So it's almost like with you, with certain, like with mid aughts indie rock, how like it's cut and paste as far as how a lot of those voices sound, and there's no unique quality to them, and it doesn't offend you, but it doesn't stand out to you. For me, with all due respect to this, and there's only one listen. I mean, I could listen to other songs where I'm like, oh, I was totally wrong. It was just that one track. But for me, given this one go, there wasn't enough standout quality about the sound of his voice for me to be like, yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. I didn't hate it. It just didn't, it's like whatever to me, I guess I should say. But I think what really saved the song for me was this the music that was happening here. There were shades of like cold industrial bleakness to it, in the rhythm section for the most part, while also having this funk chug rhythmic movement, which is an interesting dynamic, and I like those dynamics that are at play throughout this track. So it was a really good stuff. It was a good first listen, and wading into the Killing Joke waters. For me, I'd be interested to hear more, to get a better grasp on how much I like this band, or potentially how much I'll like this band, and the rest of their stuff that you might throw my way. And it sounds like, as you mentioned earlier, you alluded to a future episode where we'll be discussing these guys. So I imagine that means it'll be one devoted to another one of their tracks, which, as I stated, I look forward to. So tell me a bit more about these guys, John.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Andy. I will preface all this by saying I am no expert in Killing Joke. This is the only album that I've got. This is the most commercial of all their albums, and the most sort of immediate to listen to. And the song that you just heard intrigued me when I heard it on the radio for the first time, but it's probably took me another sort of 5 to 10 years to actually really like the song.
Oh, well,
So there you go.
yeah. Well, then now I don't feel so bad about
Oh,
my.
no.
I don't want to say it's lukewarm. There, I'm like, what do I say, like
Yeah.
70% on board with this song. I'm just not 100% in there yet.
Don't get me wrong, I fucking love this song now, and I hate any person who doesn't worship it immediately. But
We've got a bright future
and
there.
I shall drop some comments in this episode to let you know that. But no,
So it's you with those burner accounts on all those other
Yes.
episodes.
Of course it is. Yes, it's Canadian and French. Anyway, but what's really nice and refreshing is that you don't have any of the baggage that I have. I heard this music came out in '84.
Sure.
I think it was at the same time on the radio was stuff like fucking, I don't know, not Karma Chameleon, but something like that, and
Yeah.
King, and probably Dead or Alive and stuff like that. So really blandy, charty stuff, bit of Smiths, and then this fucking thing plays on the radio, and sounds a lot darker and a bit more obscure and obtuse, and what the hell's he actually singing about? So it intrigued me rather than bowled me over. But anyway, there's quite a bit of like anecdotal stuff about this band, so I shall crack on. But yeah, I was really interested. I don't hear the Cure at all.
Oh wow! Even with that 4-note arpeggio motif with the chorus effect. Okay.
But it's interesting that you do. I know, and totally valid as well, because as you say, you've got a blank slate, as it were, and you hear that and pick it up straight away. And I find that really interesting.
Okay.
And interesting that I don't. But there you go. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Killing Joke formed in Notting Hill, which all we know from the floppy-haired Hugh Grant film, is in London.
Yeah.
And they're formed in 1979. They're known as post-punk, industrial rock, industrial metal,
Ooh.
gothic rock, and new wave.
Can I just say that the metal thing is I find it intriguing. I don't know if I would be quick to label this metal, but I grew up after metal had sort of fully become more fully formed. But that chugging motif, I could see bands who would go on to contribute to the metal movement having been like, "Ooh, I like that. Let me do a little pulling from that buffet." You know what I mean? Because it's
Yeah.
got that muscularity to it for sure.
And bands afterwards
Yeah.
as well. But anyway, so members are Jazz Coleman, vocals, keyboards, Geordie Walker, guitar, Youth, otherwise known as Martin Glover, bass, and Paul Ferguson, drums. So Ferguson and Coleman met in late '78, when they were both in at one point in another band called Matt Stagger, which they then both left and to form Killing Joke. They put some adverts in the Melody Maker music paper, then were the days, and Walker and Youth joined, and the band was formed in June '79. Now, this is a bit of a breakneck tour after this, but Coleman said his manifesto at the time was to, in quotes, define the exquisite beauty of the atomic age in terms of style, sound, and form. He gave this little explanation about their name. The Killing Joke is like when people watch something like Monty Python on the television and laugh, when really they're laughing at themselves. It's like a soldier in the First World War. He's in the trench. He knows his life is gone and that within the next 10 minutes, he's going to be dead. And then suddenly he realizes that some cunt back in Westminster's got him sussed. What am I doing this for? I don't want to kill anyone. I'm just being controlled. So that's what Killing Joke means, apparently. Anyway,
And
yeah.
here, all I could think of was Batman. So
Batman, exactly. Yeah, Alan Moore. Yeah. Uh, to give an idea of how quickly things happen for them, June '79, they form the band. August '79, first gig supporting the Ruts and the Selector, which is one of my favourite bands from that period, two-tone. September '79, they started the Malicious Damage record label themselves. October '79, they released their debut EP, Turn to Red, which was distributed by Island Records. October '79, Turn to Red comes under the attention of BBC Radio 1 DJ John Peel, who came to champion the band's urgent new sound and gave them extensive airplay. The band recorded their first session for Peel's show at the end of October.
Jesus.
So basically 4 months from forming.
Yeah, that's a fucking stretch of 4 months for
Unbelievable.
for the history books right there, man. Talk about tenacity.
Yeah. So their first album was actually really interesting. Killing Joke's early material fused together elements of punk, funk, dub reggae as well, and as we hear a bit of that bass. But into 1980, the following year, the sound developed into something much more dense and aggressive, which they described as heavy dance music, and it was more akin towards going towards heavy metal. So the debut album, self-titled Killing Joke, was released in October 1980, so like a year on from that first bright start. Second album followed, What's This For? This is in capitals, in '81. Killing Joke had become notorious due to controversies, or controversies, who knows, that arose from their imagery. The images that appeared on their records and stage that were often bizarre, reflecting the band's very black humour, with shock tactics designed to create reaction. So the 1980 single War Dance Sleeve had already depicted Fred Astaire dancing in a war field. One promotional poster featured an original photo of German Abbot Alban Schlachtleiter walking among a row of Nazi brown shirts appearing to return the Hitler salute. And some people thought that it looked like the Pope, and it was even dodgier image of the Pope, bringing back the sort of Hitler. Third album, Revelation, was recorded in '82 in Germany with producer Connie Plank, friend of the channel. A stalwart krautrock luminary who'd previously worked obviously with Neu, Cluster, Harmonia, Kraftwerk, and many others. Revelations peaked at number 12, the first time any other albums have got into the top 20 of the UK albums chart. So members of the band, especially Mr. Coleman, the lead singer, have become immersed in the occult, particularly in the works of occultist Aleister Crowley. In February of that year, in 82, Coleman, with Walker following shortly afterwards, moved to Iceland, not the freezer shop, the actual country, to survive the impending apocalypse, which Coleman predicted was coming soon. Youth, who stayed in England, left the band after a few months. He then began the band Brilliant with Ferguson, but the latter defected and travelled to Iceland to rejoin Killing Joke with a new bassist called Paul Raven. Having survived the apocalypse, the band's fourth album, still with Connie Plank
They're
at the
lucky.
production helm, Fire Dancers, was released in 83. The band achieved mainstream success in January 85 with the single Love Like Blood, which you just heard, which blended goth and new wave to pop and rock, and it peaked at number 16 in the UK singles charts. In Europe and overseas, it reached number 5, the Netherlands, number 6, New Zealand, and number 8 in Belgium. So this song and then another single, 80s, were both included on their fifth album, Nighttime, which was released in 85. So this album really sort of skirted with the charts and popularity. It took their band songwriting in a much more melodic and almost anthemic direction. And the album itself reached number 11 in the UK albums charts, their highest position to date. It became an international success, staying in the Dutch charts for 9 weeks and reaching the top 10, and peaking at number 8 in New Zealand and a 14-week stay in the charts over there. Ahead of the release of the album, the band performed 3 songs live on the UK TV show The Tube, which was fronted at the time by Jules Holland, amongst others, in January 85. And I remember watching that episode and being struck how singular this track, well, the whole band, but this track in particular sounded. So AllMusic said, Nighttime finds the band caught between their earlier aggression and a calmer, more immediately accessible approach. The tension between the two sides is a perfect balance, and as a result, Nighttime is arguably the quartet's freshest album since its debut, with a warm, anthemic quality now supplementing the blasting, driving approach that made the band's name. Yeah, just on that, the vocals usually a lot more aggressive and almost growling, and he's really cut back on that.
Okay.
So interesting you pointed out it's sort of more like blander, but some more homogenized,
Yes.
which is interesting.
Yeah. It's also
Paul
interesting to hear that his voice, this is atypical of him, so maybe
Yes.
I will find the character in his voice more intriguing on other tracks.
Yeah. So Pop Matt says the band is simply on fire on this record. Having ditched his trademark bark, Coleman's singing voice is especially strong. Raven's bass tones sound rich. Ferguson's usual precise, furious drumming is complemented by hi-hat accents and stuttering electronic drum beats. And Walker's guitar work is incredible, opting for a much tighter, tetchier feel, his soaring chords slashing away viciously, only to be followed by gorgeous arpeggios. The album's defining moment is the beautiful Love Like Blood, an absolutely perfect encapsulation of the sound the band were going for at the time. Aided greatly by Coleman's subtle synth notes and piano stabs in the background, Geordie's guitar mirrors Raven's stuttering bass line during the verses, only to launch a spectacular burst of spacious chords during the chorus. It's Coleman who dominates the track, though. Always a talented lyricist, this song represents his best work, impassioned, contemplative, primal, and tender at the same time. Punk, goth, new wave, dance, pop, Love Like Blood covers all the ground with astonishing grace, a word many would have never associated with the band in years prior, and to this day it remains Killing Joke's defining moment, their signature song. So I'll go through the lyrics. There's some interesting bits to it, which you would never know unless you happen to do research on it. We must play our lives like soldiers in the field. The life is short. I'm running faster all the time. Strength and beauty destined to decay, so cut the rose in full bloom. I will just stop here for a second to say that is a reference to Yukio Mashima, who's a Japanese writer who had fascinations with youth and with early deaths. He wrote stuff about James Dean dying, etc.
Yeah.
He actually committed suicide himself at the age of 45 after a failed coup d'etat. We'll come back to him in a second, but just so you know, that's a reference to that. Then the chorus, till the fearless come and the act is done, a love like blood, a love like blood, and it repeats to the first come and the act is done, love like blood. Next verse, every day through all frustration and despair, love and hate fight with burning hearts. This is a reference to a line from one of the many references Killing Jokes makes to the central text of the Book of Law by Alistair Crowley. From chapter 2, verse 24, which says, "Love one another with burning hearts. On the low men trample in the fierce lust of your pride in the day of your wrath." Absolute bollocks. So yeah, every day through all frustration and despair, love and hate fight with burning hearts till legends live, and man is God again. Again, just another note on that. This is further references Yukio Mishima. Really interesting. This 1946 New Year's Day speech by Emperor Hirohito, Japan, commonly known as the Humanity Declaration, was a rescript issued at the request of the American forces at the end of World War II. The main sticking point of the speech, the renunciation of the divinity of the Japanese imperial lineage. So rather than being appointed by God, they're now just mortals. And it was a source of great ire for the ultra-nationalist Mishima, and the restoration of such a belief would be the claimed reason for his failed 1970 coup d'etat and his subsequent ritual suicide. So really interesting stuff they put in there. Anyway, back to the, sorry. And self-preservation rules the day no more. We must dream of poisoned lands and fields that never fade in season. As we move towards no end, we learn to die. Red tears are shed on grey. To the fearless come the actors down and love like blood like above. Again, it repeats, we are that bridge, and then back to the fearless comes and actors down, love like blood again, and then instrumental jams out to the end. So yeah, there was a little interesting interview with Songfax, who asked him about this, about Jazz Coleman, about Love Like Blood, and he says that's an interesting one. That was inspired by the author Yukio Mishima, who wrote this samurai ethic and modern Japan. He was a great author. It was his views on writing with your blood as an artist that really inspired me. It's a metaphor for the commitment an artist must take to his art form. And I love the warrior principle, to freedom of blood, if you like. When I was reading Spring Snow, one of Mishima's novels, I couldn't really speak for 24 hours after reading that book. It hit me so hard. Perhaps you should have tried chewing it first. And it inspired me at the same time. The song itself was a distillation of everything we hold dear, and one must aspire to walk and talk what you write about in your songs, actually live it. That's the other part of art, isn't it? You can't just be conceptual writing songs. It's the way you live your life as well. It's as important as the way you play your instruments or the music you create. This is just as important. So the band released further 10 studio albums after Nighttime, with only 1994's Pandemonium and their latest release, 2015's Pylon, actually trebling the top 20. After Raven and Ferguson quit in 87, there were many personnel changes over the years, including a 3-day stint for Andy Rourke after he'd been kicked out of the Smiths. Mm-hmm. And he lasted 3 days, obviously. The band went into hiatus from 96 to 2002, and then Raven and Youth came back to the fold. But sadly, in October 27, Paul Raven died of heart failure. The founding members all met up at his funeral, and Coleman said, "Everything came together when we all met at Raven's funeral. It was funny the unifying effect it had on all of us. It made us all realise our own mortality and how important Killing Joke was to all of us." And so Ferguson rejoined to complete the original lineup from the very start. Mm. And they continued through. Geordie Walker himself, he died in Prague on 25th November 2023, aged 64, after suffering a stroke. But Killing Joke have inspired artists of many genres. They've been name-checked by several heavy metal and rock bands such as Metallica, Soundgarden. Jane's Addiction said the group, one of their influences. Singer Perry Farrell was inspired by the percussive and tribal aspect of their music. Helmet frontman Page Hamilton described Killing Joke as huge influence. Foo Fighters covered Requiem in 97, and drummer Grohl played with the band for a period of time, actually played with Killing Joke.
Yeah.
So probably that's where you get them from. They've been cited by Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails and said he's studied their music, and obviously industrial. Al Jorgensen of Ministry described himself as a big fan of the group. The group has also been cited by alternative music acts. Kevin Shields of My Bloody Valentine mentioned the band and specifically praised Walker's touch which he described as this effortless play producing a monstrous sound. In 2002, James Murphy of dance punk band LCD Sound System lifted the rhythm section from Change to use in his debut single, Losing My Edge, which we've listened to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Just the research. I have to mention that during my research, I stumbled across an online preserved edition of Smash Hits from February/March 1985 vintage. Um, I used to read this magazine when I was pre-teen, probably stopped around 82. The big pull for punters at the time, like me, was you got there's an A4 sort of magazine, and you would have an A4 sort of poster of your band with the lyrics of the songs, which are you couldn't look up online back then. So it was great for the latest teen banger, as it were, to see the songs from Toya's latest outing or Visage or Adam the Ants or whatever. Looking at this edition online was really nostalgic, hilarious, and pitiful. Um, they gave this particular album 5 out of 10, which is not surprising for a teeny bopper magazine. But just 4 pages after the review page, there's a full double-page spread on Killing Joke, an interview with them. And I think they gave the reviewer lots of shit, which is why they scored them 5 out of 10.
Okay.
Other album reviews from that edition were Velvet Underground's lost album VU, which got 8. The Smiths Meets Murder, which got 9.5, and Tears for Fears Songs for the Big Chair, which got 8. There was an advert on the page from W.H. Smith, which is like a newsagent, declaring they had cut all their top 40 singles to £1.25 each. They also had a pen pal column in the magazine called RSVP, which had like little classified adverts like you used to get in newspapers, but with the people's actual addresses, their full addresses.
Oh my God.
And so I've got a couple here. Everyone says here in bold, I'm looking for a hunky guy, brackets, age 15 plus, who's into Duran Duran, Paul Young, and Madonna. My hobbies include going to discos and collecting cuddly toys and pop posters. Dislikes include not having any money, heavy metal, punks, and toy dolls. Band. Right to Shelley Homewood, 68, The Paddock, Hadlow, Tunbridge, Kent, TN1, 0HF.
Jesus Christ.
And then one
Also,
below it.
the 15
Yeah.
plus thing is a huge red flag.
Again.
Like, if 15 is the floor, there needs to be a fucking ceiling there. You don't just say 15 plus.
But this is different times, Andy, much more instant. The one below it, hiya people, I'm Lou, that's LU. And this is not someone of Oriental descent. And I'm into Susie, The Cure, wow, and the B-52s. I go to boarding school, so I'm very bored. All hunks aged 17 to 20 who like spiky hair, write to Lou, 25, Castle Ashby, Northampton, Northants, and then 7, 1 I left. I'm almost tempted to write to one of these addresses to see if Lou or Shelley are still there. And they'd be in their 60s,
Yeah. Instead of spiky hair,
Or
it's
50s,
gray
yeah.
hair,
Yeah. But just it was amazing. And they had like one of the pages, there was a word search which had band names in. So if you're bored, you could search for you.
Right.
And there was a crossword as well. I mean, this is like bizarre. But yeah, it was hilarious to read that. But anyway, back to the Killing Joke. So I'm not surprised your reaction to this, because mine was probably the same when I first heard this. But they honestly, from 84, 85, this sound was very different to what was going on standard around the place. And this was a dilution of their sound as well. So other stuff is really interesting. And there's other bands that have taken on some of their songs, which you're big fans of, which we'll get to another time.
Excellent. Yeah. No, where I found similarities between them and their counterparts of the time. I also acknowledge that there were things that these guys were doing in this, at least in this track, that I didn't find going on with some of those same contemporaries where they shared similar attributes. Where they diverged and created their own sound is this interesting split between, industrial sounds and that heavier, more muscular, touching on metal sound in that chug motif. I mean, I couldn't help but chuckle because this is just wrought with chugging. And your issue with Tool was the chugging guitar, and here is a band who may have pioneered the advent of chugging, or at least contributed to that
Yeah.
sound being becoming more mainstream in a subgenre completely divorced from these guys. So yeah, I found all that very interesting, and with added information and contextual evidence, even more so now that we've discussed it some. But yeah, there were aspects of this song that just the vocal delivery on this just didn't hit with me. But that now I'm
That's fine.
like I'm jonesing to hear more of it because it sounds like this is a diversion from his normal, more unique approach to vocals that I want to hear.
But isn't it always the case that this is the most popular song?
Yeah, right.
That's, it's always the way, isn't it? That, you think, and either you think, oh, not two, and the band sound totally different, and
Yeah,
what it's doing different to what you like, or you really like this, then you check out the rest of their catalogue, and it's nothing like it, and for God's sake.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's always the way. But yeah, really interesting, a much loved band as well, and they did plough their own furrows, as it were, in terms of the way they went. Beset by all sorts of issues and problems, most of which are of their own making. But that's the music for you. But
Yeah.
thanks for listening to this, Andy. I should wrap things up.
Thank you.
Folks out there, please tell us what you think. If you like this, do hit the like button, slap your meaty paw on there, and give it a thumbs up and all that shite. Please do drop some comments. We'd love to hear from you on what you think of this. Be interesting for people who remember this from back in the day when it came out, as well as to what it sounded like compared to other stuff that was around the time. As I remember, it was fairly vacuous beginnings of indie pop, but radio friendly shit. It was really, apart from John Peel, it was really hard to listen to find anything else that was of more interest. But yeah, please, we'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. We really appreciate everybody who does join and support the channel. So please hop on board and collect your commemorative detail. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
We'll see you later, guys.